Shalom. Last night, close to 100 members of the Union College community, along with 300 people over Zoom, joined our educational gathering for Israel with Professor Berk. Many in the Union community may not be educated on what is going on in Israel, and this makes Jewish students, faculty, and staff feel isolated. This educational and peaceful gathering's intent was to help everyone better understand what is going on in order to support our Jewish community. We are so grateful to each and every participant that came with an open mind, a willingness to learn and understand, curiosity, compassion, and respect for humanity. This event reinforced our commitment to do everything that we can to support our Jewish students, especially now. Our community is so lucky and blessed to have Professor Berk at Union. He did an amazing job presenting the information in a clear and concise way and answered every question with dignity. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you for being a staunch advocate of Israel and the Jewish people. Thank you for supporting the Jewish community at Union. Unfortunately, the beginning of the event was not recorded, and so I'm taking the opportunity to share our message with you now. This is a very challenging time for Israel and the Jewish people. This horrific massacre was not a result of a multi-generational conflict. It was not about politics. This is a battle over the very existence of the Jewish people, fueled by Jew hatred, pure anti-Semitism of the like that we have not seen since the Holocaust. We are in a war against evil, and we must fight it and eradicate it to its roots, and we will persevere. Throughout our history as a people, whenever we came under attack, we relied on our two most powerful resources to get us through: our faith and our community. Our rock-solid, unwavering, unshakable faith in the God of Israel, who neither sleeps nor slumbers and who will surely watch over our brothers and sisters this time, as he has in the past. Our incredible Jewish community spans the globe and traverses the 7 seas. This is a beautiful family of which we are proud to be a part of. At times like this, we must lean on one another for support, strength, and courage. Our family is under attack, and it is our responsibility to stand by each other in every way that we can. At times like this, we all look for answers. We want to know why. We wish we had those answers for you today. The best thing we can do together is pray. At the event, Josh Azulai, VP of the Chabad Student Board and a current student of Hebrew professor Karen Zilberberg, sent on behalf of the Union Jewish community our deepest condolences to Karen and her family for the tragic murder of their dear brother, a father of 2, at the hands of Hamas in Kibbutz Nachal Oz. May they be comforted among the mourners of Zion. May the memory of Ilan ben Yehuda ben Nurit forever be a blessing. Let's open our hearts and pray. Let's remember that wars are fought with guns and weapons, but they are won or lost in the mind and the heart. Our enemies chose to launch this attack on the happiest day of the Jewish year, Simchat Torah. They did not for a reason, because they are aiming to crush us, to demoralize us, to pull us down and quash our spirit. Do not allow the enemy to infiltrate your mind. Instead, let us fill our hearts with hope, faith, and encouragement. The Jewish people have always known that our mandate is to be a light upon the nations. Our job is to fight darkness with light, light, and more light. While there is a physical war, our calling right now is to be a source of light, to increase in mitzvahs and good deeds. Judaism teaches us that it works. When we do a good deed here in Schenectady, New York, it actually sends tremendous spiritual energy, protection, and blessing to our brothers and sisters in Israel. Please add a mitzvah to your life for Israel. Seek unity, mend broken relationships, take part in spiritual practices such as putting on tefillin. Give charity every day. We handed out ARCs, acts of random kindness charity boxes, which can be used every day to drop in a coin. Please contact us if you'd like one too. It may seem counterintuitive, but if the recent tragedy in our homeland has you second guessing the wisdom of putting up a mezuzah or wearing your Star of David around your neck, or if you're considering participating less in Jewish life at Shabbat celebrations or whatever, remember this: never once in history has hiding our Judaism worked in our favor and brought us safety. The opposite is true. Only by being proud Jews, by building our Jewish community, by engaging, participating, and bringing others to do the same, can we hope to defeat the menace of terrorism and hatred. After Professor Berk's talk, students came to Chabad to be together. Each one resolved to find a sense of purpose, to do something to help the situation in their own individual ways. Students committed to checking up on friends' well-being, having hard conversations with their peers, calling family, adding in prayers, and many other actions. What stands out most are the many students who committed to putting up a mezuzah on their dorm room door, a public statement of their Jewish identity. This event with Professor Berk strengthened their resolve. It made them feel even prouder to be Jewish. We are so lucky to be a part of a people that values life. The Torah is our moral compass, and we are blessed to have this incredibly rich heritage. So put up that mezuzah, take out your chai, take your kippah, and display them proudly. Put on tefillin, go to Shabbat dinner, show up. Do a mitzvah, and may the God Almighty protect our brothers and sisters and bring them home safely. We hope you learned a lot from Professor Berk's talk. Please use the information you gained to counter the tremendous disinformation and ignorance out there. Please feel free to share this recording with anyone who can benefit from it. Am Yisrael Chai. Sorry.
That the parking lot was filled with explosives and a terrible disaster took place. I repeat once again, both the Pentagon and President Biden have come to the conclusion that this was not an Israeli strike. One has to ask the question, what are the roots of this, the immediate roots of this? And I think, as has been already said in a number of places, the immediate cause are the events of the morning of October 7th of this year. Sometime around 6:30 in the morning, Hamas terrorists crossed into the border. They shot everybody in sight, took a number of Jewish babies and cut their heads off. And then they burned people alive and they raped a number of women and girls. Whatever position you take, there can be no justification for that. And anybody who defends that action should be ashamed of themselves. This was murder. Some of you have taken the Holocaust class with me, and some of you will take it, may I hope, take it in the future. If you took the Holocaust class with me, this should be, those events of October 7th, really should be reminiscent of the actions of the Einsatzgruppen. These were the mobile killing squads that the Nazis had established that roamed behind the lines of the advancing German army in the German-occupied areas of the Soviet Union and killed every Jewish man, woman, and child that they could get their hands on. Only that time, what they did was they caught the Jewish babies. They threw them up in the air and caught them on their bayonets. That's what Hamas did, only they didn't catch them on the bayonets. They cut the heads off of Jewish babies. That should never, never be forgotten. There can be no defense of that. No cause, no grievance justifies what was done. Hamas did exactly what it said it would do. In its founding charter, established in 1988, it called for the destruction of the state of Israel and the killing of every Jew that a Hamas supporter could find, every Jewish man, woman, and child. Hamas and its supporters continue to use that rhetoric. When you see a demonstration in which supporters of Hamas talk about, we want a Palestinian state between the river and the sea. The river is the Jordan, the sea is the Mediterranean, and you don't have to be a geographical wizard to figure out that there's no room for the state of Israel. When you hear people call for a Palestine between the river and the sea, they're calling for the murder of almost 7 million Jews. I suggest that that also ought not to be forgotten. Timing is always an issue for the historian. Why an event takes place when in fact it does take place. Why does the American Revolution take place in 1776 and not in 1766? Why did the French Revolution take place in 1789 and not in 1779? It's always a problem. And it's a problem here in dealing with the events of October 7th. Why did Hamas strike at that period of time? Now, I am a historian. When this is all over, this you can take to the bank. Israel will set up an investigating commission, and it will look at all of these questions, including timing. I suspect that they will come up with the following answers. Hamas suspected or believed. Everything is in perception. For those of you that are in my classes, you hear I drum it into you ad nauseum. Everything is in perception. Hamas perceived, I think, that Israel was weak, or this was a time of increasing Israeli vulnerability. The vulnerability flowed from a number of things. Israel was just polarized over the judicial reforms. Hundreds of thousands of people went out into the streets. In addition to that, there were many Israeli reservists. Israel has a citizen army, a reserve army. Thousands of them said they would not serve. They would not respond to a call-up. They would not respond to any additional training. Did Hamas think that this was the time that Israel would not react? And there was also something else. Some people say this is the most important thing of them all. Israel was close to establishing some sort of rapprochement with Saudi Arabia. Israel already had a relationship, the so-called Abraham Accords, with a number of Arab countries. This was probably, remember, this is not mathematics. You cannot say A plus B produces C. You cannot do this. And we don't have all of the available data. This was probably an attempt by Hamas, knowing full well that there would be a ferocious Israeli response, that this was an attempt to torpedo both the Abraham Accords and, of course, any talk of a rapprochement or relationship with Saudi Arabia. So that's the reason I think it was why. Why at this period of time? In terms of the why, again, forgive me for being redundant. Hamas is a genocidal organization that calls for the destruction of all Jews and for the destruction of the state of Israel. In terms of the Israeli response, it is shockingly, overshockingly bad. To use a cliche, the Israelis took their eyes off of the ball. They were asleep at the switch. Why were they asleep at the switch? Again, an investigating commission will find out all of the answers. Again, I suspect that they will find that the Israelis were so much concerned with what was happening over the judicial reforms, so much concerned about the terrorism that was coming from the West Bank, in which a number of Jewish families were murdered, men, women, and children were murdered, that they looked there and they took their eyes off what was happening in Gaza. And then we come to a transcendental question. How do you manage evil? Make no mistake, there is evil on this planet. Hamas is evil. When you call for the murder of every man, woman, and child of a particular religion, that is evil. And here Israel made a fundamental mistake. Israel thought it could manage Hamas. Israel thought that if it allowed a certain quantity of goods to come into Gaza, if Israel thought if it would allow 18,000 people from Gaza to come and work in Israel each day, the economic well-being of the people of Gaza would be greatly enhanced, and surely Hamas, who really wants to destroy the state of Israel, would hold its hands, would stay its hands, because the people of Gaza would suffer, because the Israelis would respond, and because the 18,000 people would not come in. That was a terrible mistake. That was a terrible, terrible mistake. Hamas was also facilitated by aid that came from Iran. Iran also wants to destroy the state of Israel. Two Ayatollahs, Ayatollah Khomeini and Ayatollah Khamenei, have called for the destruction of Israel. Israel is a cancer, a malignancy in the Middle East that must be eliminated. There's a digital clock in Tehran that counts down minute by minute from the year 2040, because the Islamic Republic of Iran has called for the destruction of Israel sometime before 2040. Iran helped plan it, Iran supported the people with training, and Iran gave them weapons. A lesson for the future. Can you manage Iran? That's a question for Israeli foreign policy and American foreign policy. In addition to that, The Israelis, again, I told you, allowed 18,000 people from Gaza to work in Israel. That, in retrospect, turns out to have been a terrible mistake. What we know from the documents that were captured or held by dead Hamas terrorists, we found they knew exactly where everything was on the kibbutzim, the collective farms. They knew exactly when Israeli soldiers would come, when they would go off duty, and so on. There's not a doubt in my mind that that was provided at least by some of those people who went to work in Israel. So, again, why the Israeli response? And then, of course, what should be the Israeli response? Israel did what every country in the world from the beginning of time had done. And that is, if someone comes to you, kills your people, kills your infants, rapes your women and girls, you respond. General Sherman was right. All war is hell. War is hell. But the Israelis did, I think, what was as humanely possible in order to minimize the costs of war. Israel warned people about the coming bombings. They dropped leaflets to tell people that they should leave a building, that the building was going to be a target. I teach not only the Holocaust, not only the Middle East history, but a number of history courses, including the Second World War. During the Second World War, we bombed Germany by day, and the RAF, the Royal Air Force, bombed Germany by night. The two air forces killed 800,000 German men, women, and children. This is not the time or the course to discuss or the lecture to discuss whether this was right. I happen to believe it was right because it helped end the war. No warning was given. Civilians were targeted. And when people shout at the Israelis and say, well, you're telling people to evacuate the Gaza Strip, the fact of the matter is they should evacuate the Gaza Strip. This is the way you get people out of the line of fire. Again, I don't minimize the casualties, but always remember what the cause of it was: an unmitigated terrorist act, the likes of which has not been seen since the period of the Holocaust, since the period of the Nazis. So what is Israel going to do? A student in the Middle East class asked me, what is the end game of all of this? And if you want to know the honest answer, damned if I know what the end game is going to be. But this I will tell you, as time goes on, and if you are Jew or non-Jew in a prayerful mood, what you should be doing is praying for the women and girls that are held hostage in Tehran, but in the Gaza Strip. Because the fact of the matter is, as you and I are sitting here, they are probably being gang raped by Hamas. So Israel has to get these people out. But I must tell you, it's going to be a very costly enterprise. Every day that is delayed, the suffering of these hostages is exacerbated and increased. Israel has got to get these people out. Whatever the cost, Israel has to get these people out. That's what any country in the world, including our own, would do, and it is the right thing to do. The problem, of course, is it's going to cost a lot of lives. This is the worst type of fighting, my military friends tell me. Street to street, house to house, knife to knife, not an open battlefield. It will cost the Israelis 300 to 600 or 700 dead. And always remember the disproportionate nature of this. We lost 50,000, 55,000 men and women in Vietnam in probably 10 years or 12 years of fighting. Israel lost, on October 7th, 1,500 people. You don't have to be a mathematical wizard to figure out, given the disproportionate population, it is as if Israel lost between 40 and 50,000 men, women, and children, 50,000 citizens, 40 to 50,000 citizens in one afternoon and one evening, and one morning as well. So for Israel to go in and fight house to house, street to street, is going to be very difficult. Maybe a miracle would take place. Maybe they will do it on the cheap. That is, they will not cost them that much. Maybe there will be a negotiated settlement. But if there isn't, the Israelis will go in. And hopefully large numbers of people in Gaza will not be within that vicinity. What should be the real end game of Gaza? Well, should Israel occupy the area? That would not be good for Israel. It wouldn't be good at all. It did that before, it would pay a blood price, and every year a number of Israelis are going to die, Israeli soldiers will die. It also puts a terrible responsibility on Israel. And if Israel withdraws, on the other hand, this you can take to the bank. Hamas will come back. And again, 5 years from now, we'll be talking and having another rally, assuming I'm still alive. So the point in all of this is, Israel is in a quandary, a very difficult quandary. Some of you may ask the question, what is the root of all of this? You can't forget about October 7th, but where does it all begin? What's the real cause? And I say to you unequivocally, both sides are right. The Palestinians are right, and the Jews are right as well. Both have legitimate claims for what the Palestinians call Philistine and what Jews refer to as Eretz Yisrael. But here's the difference, and there should be no ambiguity about this whatsoever. One side says, we will take what we can get. That is, when the British in 1937 in the Peel Partition Plan threw up their hands because there was an Arab revolt, and the Jews were getting nervous as well, the Jews in Palestine. The British in 1937 said, the only way out of this is to partition the land. Give part of it to the Jews, give part of it to the Arabs. The Jews also, together with the Arabs, refused it. But, you know your history, what's in the background? In the background is the Third Reich. In the background, Jews are fleeing from Germany and Austria and Czechoslovakia. The Zionist movement rethought its opposition. And the Zionist movement said, we'll take a truncated state within Palestine. The Arabs refused to accept it. November 29th, 1947, the United Nations General Assembly proclaims Resolution 181, dividing Palestine west of the River Jordan into an Arab state and a Jewish state. The leaders of the Yishuv, the term Yishuv is the Hebrew term for the Jewish settlement in Palestine. The leaders of the Yishuv said, we'll take it. The Arab world said, no. That's what Hamas says now. That's the element of consistency. The Arabs have a legitimate claim. So do the Jews. The Jewish position is, we'll take what we can get, half, less than half. The Arab position was and is and will continue into the future. It's all ours. Nobody has the right to take away a single inch of Arab land. That is the main cause. Or as one Zionist theoretician put it in 1931, he said it in German. Moshe Dayan, the great Israeli general, said it in Hebrew in 1968. I'm telling you, yeah, I'll say the same thing in English in 2023. What we can get from the Arabs, we do not need. What we need from the Arabs, we cannot get. And that is, no one on the Arab side was prepared to acquiesce in the creation of a Jewish state in even a small part of Palestine. That is the root of the conflict. When the day comes when there will be an Arab leader of foresight and of courage who can say what Anwar Sadat said back in the 1970s. Remember, before your time, but we all were astonished. We watched on television as an Egyptian plane. Remember, Israel had fought Egypt in the 1973, the Yom Kippur War. A terrible war. Israel lost over 2,600 men. The greatest loss since the wars of 1948, when Israel lost 6,000 men. 2,500. That's the equivalent of 160,000 Americans. Do you understand that? And yet, Sadat said, I am willing to make peace. Give me back the Sinai, and I will make peace. He comes to Jerusalem, speaks before the Knesset, and he gets his peace. The Israeli Prime Minister, Menachem Begin, who had sworn before this and a pack of Bibles. I won't give them Sharm el-Sheikh. I won't give them the Sinai. I won't give them El Arish. This is a buffer area. There's oil there. We need this. He gave it all up because Sadat had said, we will make peace. We will recognize you. We acquiesce in the creation of a Jewish state. None of this should have happened. That cycle of wars should not have happened. Had the leaders of the Arab community, the Arabs in the Middle East, had accepted Resolution 181, there would not be those cycle of wars. There would not be a single Palestinian refugee. If before October 7th, the leaders of Hamas, despite the terror, Hamas was responsible for the deaths of almost 1,000 Israelis in the first years of the 21st century. Despite that, if the leader of Hamas had come to the Knesset and said, all right, enough is enough. You give us an Arab state in Palestine, and we'll accept you as a Jewish state in Palestine. He never came because he cannot abandon, Hamas cannot abandon this long-standing of idea. The Jews have to be murdered, the Jews have to die, and Israel does not have the right to exist. When an Arab leader appears that has the guts and the decency to say there's room for two states west of the River Jordan, then there will be peace in the Middle East. One final word. And this is a very disturbing thing. It's connected peripherally to the Middle East. This is an issue that divides us all. One of our students posted in reaction to a rally, a fundraiser, to bring money to the people in the state of Israel. Right. That's right. And if I understand correctly, you said that those people should burn in hell.
I said, and this funding of genocide.
All right. She says, again, the Jews should burn in hell. That is the Jews. No. I will give you a chance. Should anybody burn in hell? Should anybody burn in hell? You disgraced us. You disgraced Union College. To say that people should burn in hell because they attended a rally. That's not good. I'm asking all of you, whatever side you take, have some civility. Recognize the humanity of other people. And if you do, we will not descend into anarchy. We will not descend into chaos. We will not descend into hate. And Union College will be a place that it is supposed to be. A union of all faiths, of all ethnicities, of all people. Because if you don't do that, this is going to be one place of hell, where all of us will descend into the abyss. Love each other. At least have the decency to respect the opinions of others. Genocide? I'll tell you who committed genocide. Genocide is when you kill or take off the heads of babies, when you rape, when you shoot. You know what? I will give you a chance. We're not in the Middle East now. All right. That's genocide. When you declare that a state has to be destroyed, 7 million people. When you murder and you rape and you mutilate bodies, that's genocide. So, my friends, I ask you all, whatever position that you take, have respect for each other and have respect for the opinions of each other. This is what we are. We are human beings. We are Jews and Christians and Muslims and atheists. If we are not to devour each other, we must respect each other. Thank you very much. All right. Now, I will ask you if there are any questions. If you want to make a statement, make it as quickly as you can, because there are other people here who want to speak and who want to ask questions. I do not have a monopoly on the truth. I'm not the prophet from Union College. Never suspend your rational faculties. That's what I told the students in the classes this morning. If you don't like what I say, challenge me with it. But have civility and respect as I have for you. Yes.
So how would you respond to the claims that Gaza is an open-air prison and that The Hamas incursion into Israel is analogous to the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising.
All right. He's asking the question, how do I respond to the statement that Gaza is an open-air prison and is what is happening in Gaza, the resistance, is reminiscent of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising? The second part is just absolute nonsense. In the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, where the Jews did not oppose anybody, the Nazis murdered 450,000 Jews. They starved them to death, they raped them, they sent them to Treblinka, where they killed about 5,000 to 10,000 every day. So to compare that is not only stupid, it is obscene. As to whether Gaza is an open-air prison, life is hard in Gaza. Life was hard in Gaza. The Israelis had a blockade on. Why did the Israelis put a blockade on Gaza? Because Gaza was taken over by Hamas. Hamas killed almost 1,000 Jews. Hamas wants to destroy the state of Israel. Hamas was arming itself to the teeth. No other country in the world would tolerate that. That's why there was a blockade on Gaza. And for that matter, which people seem to forget now, there was a twofold blockade. Not only did Israel put a blockade on Gaza, Egypt put a blockade on Gaza. Hamas is a derivative of the Muslim Brotherhood. Those who govern Egypt, it's a dictatorship. They overthrew a Muslim government, a Muslim Brotherhood government. They don't want people coming from Hamas and coming from Gaza to foment revolution and terror within Egypt. Again, how do you prevent the blockade? It's very simple. The leaders of Hamas could have said again and again and again, we're prepared to accept a Jewish state in the Middle East. But they never did. They fired rockets. They snuck across the border and they killed Jews. And they continue to proclaim that Israel must be destroyed and every Jewish man, woman, and child should be killed. That's why there's a blockade. So this is not the Warsaw Ghetto. That's an obscenity. It's not the Warsaw Ghetto. And the blockade, as brutal as it may have been, there was a rationale and a reason behind it. And the blockade would have ended in 1 hour if the leaders of Hamas had said, it's enough. We accept a Jewish state alongside of an Arab state. Yes. You know, you gotta blare it out.
Bring the microphone. I'll bring the
She's going to bring a microphone.
What would you say to people who are afraid to express their support for the citizens and prisoners in Gaza?
The state of what?
The citizens and prisoners in Gaza, like especially amongst
I'm
like
not sure I understand. What would I say to people who are afraid of voicing support for whom?
For anybody, any of the citizens like involved in the violence in Gaza.
Don't be afraid. What can I tell you?
Well, like my brother's friend at Columbia was physically assaulted for putting up missing posters of
That's wrong.
captives in Gaza.
That's wrong. And what the administration at Union should have done, so make the strongest possible statement that any type of hostility, bullying is not tolerated, and the students who do it should be punished in one way or another. Above all, whatever side you take, you know where I stand, but whatever side you take, do not be bullied. Do not be afraid to speak out. If you can't speak out in an academic community, we're dead in the water. This should be the last refuge of free speech. No bullying, no talking about people burning in hell. Respect people for whom they are. And what we all are human beings.
So my question is, given the complexity that situation is in terms of understanding, as a professor who has a huge background in a variety of different sectors in terms of history, what resources would you suggest for students that are trying to better educate themselves on this topic? Because a lot of students, myself included, have just recently begun to educate themselves on this, because there are a lot of different medias
You're absolutely
reporting
right.
different things. And if you could also cite what sources you have derived the claims that there are 40 beheaded children and that women and young girls are being raped.
The first part is you just read. You go to a good reference librarian and you ask the reference librarian, or you ask me some of the books to read, or you ask a reference librarian. They'll know it. Any professor in the Middle East will tell you. But remember, we all have our biases, including me. As for the last part of what you said, there is absolute total evidence about the beheading of babies. Even the New York Times, no great friend of Israel, for sure, has published information about the massacre and the atrocities that took place. Don't deny what is undeniable, and don't defend it. Once again, there can be no justification for atrocities like mutilation, killing people, and rape. There is no cause in the world, no grievance in the world that can justify that. So the evidence in the last part, that is overwhelming.
If I could just say a follow-up question to that, just because I do know that an Israeli spokesperson for the prime minister said that they themselves could not verify the claims of beheaded children. So that is why I guess my question is,
Right.
Where should we be looking towards to be getting our
I can't
information?
tell you, again, the books, the newspapers, what you hear on television, but whatever you hear from any professor at Union, there's no professor at Union that knows it all, and that includes me. Never suspend your rational faculties. Read as much as you can, use your common sense, use your ability to reason, and you come up with, I think, what is the correct assessment of the situation.
Thank you, Professor.
You're welcome. Let's give her, you got somebody there, and then you come back.
My question is, so when you say that the Israeli government warns the Gazans before they drop bombs and to evacuate, where are they expected to go?
Where are they expected
They
to
have
go?
no airports.
Right? There are places small as Gaza. Again, she's asking the Israelis have warned people where to go. They tell them that the bombs are going to come. They ought to evacuate their places. There are places, no matter how small the Gaza Strip is, there are places that the Israelis would not bomb because they're relatively vacant areas. If you're applying, and you apply to what I just said, it's a hellish situation. Then why shouldn't have Hamas thought about that? If Hamas was really concerned for the people in Palestine, for the people in Gaza, why did they launch an attack that was bound to elicit a ferocious Israeli response? And, you know, the Rafah point is open. Egypt could take some of these people in. Yes, go follow up, go ahead. I'm sorry, can you go?
Why did Hamas take the Palestinians for what they did? Are you saying that it's valid for Palestinians to suffer the consequences for Hamas attack?
The answer is, what was Israel to do? That is, if Americans were captured, wouldn't we go and get them? Wouldn't we try to destroy the organization that took those prisoners and carried out that horrible massacre in the first place? You can bet your last dollar that we would do it. We did do it, and we would do it again. If Hamas was really concerned, if Hamas really had the well-being of the Palestinian people at stake, they had to know there would be a response. Whatever you say about the leaders of Hamas, they're not stupid. They're murderers, that they are, but they're not stupid. They had to know this. And they wanted to do it because they thought it would further their cause. They thought that some people in the academic areas, in the universities, and in some countries would be so upset by what was happening to Palestinian civilians that they would condemn Israel. I'm telling you again, there is no country in the world that would have stayed its hand. Not one. And again, I'm saying to you, if you're in a prayerful mood, as I'm speaking to you, Hamas is raping these women and girls. They did it on October 7th. There's no reason to believe that they are not doing it now.
Hi, thank you. First of all, I was not a student here, but I am a parent of a student who's on a semester abroad. And to come to a university and be around in this environment, you can feel the tension. There's so much tension here. I'm like, why did I come here? But let me first say, I think it's important that we're all here and everyone has their own beliefs that they bring in here. But my question is this. The Abraham Accords stem from the fact that three faiths have their origins from one document that they all recognize in some regard. Why is it so difficult then with all these origins in one faith that this one country, this one religion is not allowed to have one country? There are many Christian nations, there are many Muslim nations. Why is there so much animus towards Israel, and how would you say that? Because it's so important to have one Jewish state, to have a safe homeland for the Jewish people.
I hope you heard all that question or that statement. That's what Winston Churchill argued as the colonial secretary in the early 1920s. Why is there Arab opposition to the creation of a Jewish homeland? The Arabs have all these countries. Why can't they give a little piece of this area to the Jews? Now, I'm going to give you a Yiddish word, tachlis. Tachlis means substance. Is it to be found in Islam, since you raised the issue? Judaism is recognized as a legitimate but inferior religion in Islam. A legitimate but inferior religion. Is that the issue? Is that the problem? That these damn Jews have a right to a land in which there are Muslim holy places? Is that the issue? Is it religious tradition that does that? Is it a national conflict that does that? You know, I tell the students in my classes, sometimes there are questions, your questions are a very good one, as all the questions are. There's some things that are more within the realm of the psychoanalyst than they are of the historian or the political scientist. I've given you what I think is the issue. A national conflict, to a certain extent, a religious conflict. Beyond that, I will not go. What I know, what I can deal with, is this unbelievable resistance to the idea of having a Jewish state in even a small part of Palestine. And people operating on that basis believe it is necessary to destroy it and to kill every Jew they can get their hands on.
Professor, you called me a disgrace, but I think it's very important to note how irresponsible it was of you and this group of people, many of whom don't have access to what I said, to completely misrepresent what I said.
What did you say?
never said that all Jewish people should go to hell, and I would
I
never,
said that
ever
what
say
you
that.
said, I said that what you said is the people who attended that rally should burn in hell. Do you stand by that?
I do. I have a question for
There's
you.
nothing for me to say.
Okay. I have a question for you. You said that Gazans should evacuate. So why bomb the exits and then the buses that were carrying people trying to flee to South Gaza when the UN already said that 24 hours for everyone to evacuate from Gaza was just unrealistic and it was going to create so many deaths?
Right, absolutely right. And what did the various newspapers in the United States say? Who stopped them from fleeing? Hamas stopped them from fleeing. And why didn't the Egyptians take them in? This is a horrible thing that has taken place. But again, none of this would have taken place. None of it would have taken place
Had it
without
not
the
been for
events
the
of October
Nakba.
7th.
Had it not been for the Nakba. I have another question. Okay, yeah. So you said that calling for the death of every man, woman, and child is evil, which I absolutely agree. I think that's abhorrent. I think it's disgusting, and I think it is evil. So why did the Minister of Israel's Defense call for a complete siege and use white phosphorus and cut off electricity, fuel, water?
White
Is everyone in
phosphorus-
Gaza responsible for the
phosphorus-
actions of Hamas?
No report in an American newspaper said that the Israelis used white phosphorus. Not a single report in the American newspaper said they use white phosphorus. As to cutting off energy, cutting off fuel, this was aimed at Hamas. And cutting off water, this was aimed at Hamas. The water has now been turned on. Again, you can criticize Israel all you want. I want to hear you criticize what Hamas did on October 7th. All right, you want to talk about that? All right.
Please remember to be respectful.
Please go to the back. Please go to the back.
My only question is, how do you back up the claims that you just made that Hamas raped women and beheaded children? Like, the news can be really bad.
Because people from different countries.
Of course, the United States is not going to report on whatever Israeli is doing to Gaza. They're only going to report what they think people are going to believe. So I'm asking you to back up your claims. Where did you find the information making that Hamas is raping women and and beheading children?
Yeah, that's the same type of thinking that when a woman at Union College who have been raped say that they were raped, and the man says no. The women who spoke about rape, those who survived and those who saw it, spoke to foreign correspondents and spoke to people in Israel. That's what they did. And reporters were taken to the morgues where they saw the beheaded babies, where they saw the mutilation of the bodies. That's it. And you're telling me that's all Israeli propaganda. Is that correct?
Then why President Biden went on national television saying that when he said what is misinformation? He said he did not file an first he said it, leading to a 6-year-old being killed in Chicago, Illinois. Because when they asked the guy who did it, he said that he's been seen on the news about Palestinian people. That's why he did
the murder of that boy.
And then why did Biden say on national television what I said was a misinformation?
He never said that. He never said that this was misinformation.
That is factually inaccurate.
Biden has stood behind Israel, has said that the attack on the hospital came from Islamic Jihad. Biden condemned, as we all condemn, the killing of that 6-year-old boy. That's wrong. That's what happens when you have chaos. That's what happens when you have hate. And Biden correctly castigated those people who talk about that. But don't excuse what would happen. Don't try to deflect away from what happened on October 7th. Don't try and tell me it's all Israeli propaganda. Where? What do you want me to do? Show you the heads of the kids who were killed? You want me to bring the women who were raped and they should testify so you can hear them and humiliate them again? Not on your life.
Just on the topic of backing up evidence of kids being, I don't know about the kids being beheaded. I mean, there were reporters that went and saw them and said that this was true. But as for the fact of raping, there was a video released of an interrogation of one of the soldiers from Hamas that was taken. And while he was being interrogated, they asked, what are they planning to do with the women and children that were taken hostage into Gaza? And he said to rape them. So
I hope you heard what she said. They interviewed a captured Hamas terrorist, and the Hamas terrorist said they were going to rape the girls and rape the women.
Professor Berk, first, I just wanted to thank you for everything that you've had to say today, and also offer my condolences to the entire Jewish community at Union College and in Schenectady as a whole for the atrocities that have taken place in Israel. It's abhorrent to see, and I sympathize with the community. I had a question when you were kind of going back to the roots of the conflict. And I just wanted to ask kind of your opinion about repeated and decades of Israeli aggression against Palestinians, because I think that that's something that cannot be overlooked. In no way is Israel responsible or deserving of what took place. But I think that to look past the decades of aggression, land being taken, food and water access being cut off, just agitation in the region in general, what is there any role that that has played in acknowledgement?
May I ask you, I hope you heard her question about Israeli aggression, Israeli taking away of land and water. What do you mean by Israelis taking land?
Well, when I took a course, so I don't go here, and I did not go here. When I took a course on history in the Middle East, my professor was Lebanese, and I basically learned the inverse of what I heard today. And when a big part of what we learned was, and I guess a picture that I'm sure many people have seen, is a map of Gaza. And you look at it, you compare 1947 in comparison to now. You can see the part of the land that's given to the Israeli state, then you can also see the part that's given to Palestine. And in the decades that have transpired since 1947, you can see an obvious decrease in the land that is given and awarded to Palestinians. So I guess that's just the maps.
No land was given to the Palestinians. In the aftermath of 47 and 48, there was no Palestine, since the Palestinian leadership had rejected the idea of an independent Palestinian state. From 1948 to 1967, the area known as the West Bank was under Jordanian control. Then in 1967, when the Arabs again said, we're going to destroy all of Israel, Israel went to war and took the West Bank. As far as Gaza is concerned, Israel never had control over Gaza until relatively recently. After the 48 war, Gaza was part of Egypt. The Israelis didn't take over Gaza. The Israelis never wanted Gaza. So what territory are we talking about in Israeli that the Israelis have taken?
I guess I'd have to pull up the map and show you. I couldn't name the places.
The map will show you that Israel has more territory now than it had in 1948. That's largely because Israel took the West Bank, because from the West Bank, attacks came on Israel. Israel, when Sadat came, he wanted the Sinai back. He got the Sinai. That was the largest chunk of territory that Israel had occupied. The Golan Heights were taken by Israel in the 67 war. That was a war that was launched upon Israel.
So then do you think that the idea then that Palestinians are blaming, and I think that there's also a lot of misinformation that circulates in regard to this specific issue, but are then the colonial powers the problem here? If it wasn't Palestine's to begin with?
We can blame the colonial powers for all sorts of things. You can blame them for a whole variety of things. I am not a man of the left, but I know the colonial powers had done terrible things. But that really isn't the issue, is it? The issue is that one side says the other side doesn't have a right to live in that particular part of the land. That is the most basic issue of all. You can talk all about this. And as far as the Nakba is concerned, that is what took place in 1948 with a massive flight of Palestinians. That was a tragedy. But once again, I ask you, had the Palestinian leadership, had the Arab leadership accepted Resolution 181, there wouldn't have been a war. There wouldn't have been a single Palestinian Arab refugee. That's where it begins.
Can I ask about the second part of my question?
I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Just the second part about the aggression as well, Israeli aggression against citizens of Palestine.
What's the aggression? Tell me what the aggression is. That they have checkpoints on the West Bank?
And not necessarily checkpoints, but I mean, it's reported in the headlines all the time. And
what? Tell me, please tell me what?
Cement being filled into water holes, electricity being cut off, people being killed over the border,
Usually,
being taken.
Correct. I wish I would say that that was not the case, but it was the case. Israel is, the old saying is, Israel is a good country in a bad neighborhood. Peace with Jordan, peace with Egypt. Don't think it's a real peace between governments. Heaven help a doctor from Egypt who comes to a medical conference in Israel. He's lucky if he comes back and is alive. Heaven help a Jordanian writer who wants to come to a literary conference in Israel. The hatred in the Islamic world for Jews, for Judaism, and in fact, for the state of Israel is tremendous. Always keep that in mind. What's the population of Israel?
No idea.
You should. If you're interested in the Middle East, you should. There are less than 10 million Israelis. Less than 7 million of them are Jewish. Egypt has 90 million people. Syria has about 12 to 14. Lebanon has several million. Iraq has 50 or 60 million. Iran has close to 90 million. When I tell you that Israel is a good country in a bad neighborhood, these people will kill every Jewish man, woman, and child that they get their hands on. So if the Israelis overreact in some cases, I'm sorry, I regret it. Many Israelis regret it. But know where they are. We're talking about the Middle East, not the Middle West, not Illinois, not Indiana. We're talking about a brutal part of the world. So if the Israelis do things that I do not approve of, I will say it. But keep in mind, Israel does not call for the destruction of Egypt. It doesn't call for the destruction of Iran. It doesn't call for the destruction of Jordan. It doesn't call for the destruction of Lebanon, Syria. Iran calls for the destruction of Israel. And Iran's proxies, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and Hamas, and other people in the Middle East, they make war upon Israel. Know what we're talking about. Know where we are.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I thank you for being outspoken. Good for you. Where do you go to school?
I went to
Good for you.
Hello. Thank you very much for everybody and speaking your mind. It's been a great experience. We all do not want hate to be perpetuated, I guess, but I come from Russia and I have very weird flashbacks right now because the word rape has been said many times now, killed many, many times. And I want to talk about the language because it seems like this rhetoric perpetuates violence because it's very, very emotional. And when you start thinking about all the images, I do not think it serves the purpose of stopping any kind of conflict because as you can see, it is very, very tense here, how do you say it? So do you think that there is some other language that we could use to speak about this? Because I have a lot of feelings like propaganda in Russia does absolutely the same now. And that doesn't solve anything. Yeah, sorry.
The answer is no.
So you think there is no language to speak about?
I pride myself, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom, to speak as things as they actually were. Now, which side do you stand on between Russia and Ukraine?
I stand absolutely with Ukraine and against Russia.
When President Zelensky says that the Russians have raped women, when President Zelensky says that they have killed hostages, do you think he's using inflammatory language?
I think there's a different balance of power in my region. So Russia has much more power between Ukraine and Russia, and it is important.
So it is important to use that language.
It is important that the person who's weaker in the conflict is using that. So it is not the same as the person who is stronger in the conflict uses the same language to explain why. So they would have attacked anyway, you know? And I heard a lot of explanation of what you said, Israeli did that, but it had a purpose, right?
Again, respectfully, I disagree. Rape is rape, and it should be condemned wherever it is. There is no justification for rape, mutilation of bodies, and the killing of children. There's and it is right to speak about it. It's right to recognize evil when evil appears. Because you shove it under the water, you just shove it aside, then nobody knows what happened. Then you think this is just a disagreement between two groups. It's not only a disagreement between two groups. It's a disagreement between one group that wants to exterminate the others and the ones who want to compromise. Rape is rape, murder is murder, mutilation is mutilation, and it should be stated.
Shouldn't it be stated from the other part as well? Because Palestinians are also killed.
I'm open.
And
If-
where do we get if we just talk about how people kill each other? I mean, will it solve any conflict?
All right, you want to make this the last one? Go ahead, over there.
I don't need to be the last one. My name is Michelle Angrist. I'm Vice President of Academic Affairs and Dean of the Faculty at Union. I just wanted to thank Professor Berk, and I don't mean to be the last to speak. I wanted to just say a couple thoughts, echoing that this has been an intense hour, right? It's uncomfortable, and I applaud everyone for being here. I thank Professor Berk. I teach Middle East politics. I'm married into a Jewish family, but I grew up in the Arab world, and I'm a professor of political science, and I've taught Arab Israeli politics here since 2001. It's been a while because I'm an administrator now, and I just wanted to say a couple things to the students in this room. I taught Arab Israeli conflict. There's so many, it's a long, complicated history, and it takes a lot to learn all of the chapters. I came here, and the very first time I taught Israeli conflict, September 11th happened, and I was teaching Tuesday, Thursday morning from 9 to 10:45. And we watched the towers fall in the classroom, and I was a new professor, and I didn't know what to expect. And I was so worried about how the students would be able to concentrate and go forward that term after this had happened. Because of course, it brought the Arab-Israeli conflict into this thing that happened on American soil. And I have to tell you, I was so incredibly proud of the students. They were amazing. They engaged with the material, and they asked hard questions the way you are asking of one another, the way you are asking of Professor Berk. And they listened to one another, and they extended each other empathy. They were curious about where each other came from their different perspectives. And they taught me that students are amazing and you can trust them. And so I wanted just to say to the students, especially in this room, as we go forward, these next few weeks, months are going to be very difficult. A lot of people in a lot of places in a lot of positionality to this region are hurting. And that's going to go on for a long time. I want to ask you and challenge you to do as much as you can to take care of yourself, to take care of your peers, but to be curious about people who are hurting that you might not understand and you might not get right now. I would really encourage everybody to please extend that curiosity and compassion when you're ready, as you're ready. And we are here to support you going forward. So I just wanted to share that in this environment.
Thank you. All right, we'll give you the last question.
Evening. So my question is a continuation. I had a discussion with Professor Berk in our Great World class. I don't know if you remember that. And I think my question is more, it's a bit difficult to answer. I understand if you, and I think I know your answer. You probably want to say something about, but let's not. But my question is, concerning the blockade, you've given, valid reasons as to why it's been present for the last 10 years or so, right? You say that Israel has a need to defend their people, the Hamas uses civilians, all valid key points. My question to you is how, when Israel was implementing the policy of the blockade, what actually was their end game? Did they believe they were going to continue this blockade for the next 20 years or so?
Jerome, I really have not heard you correctly.
My
Could
question,
someone repeat the question?
yeah, I'll say it again. My question is concerning the blockade in Gaza, right?
Yes.
When it was enacted, what was Israel's final intention? Did they hope to have this for the next 50 years, a century, to leave the Palestinian people?
Now I understand.
Yeah.
What was Israel's intention in bringing about the blockade?
No, the end game of it. I understand.
The end game.
Yeah.
The end game.
Yeah.
The end game was hopefully that the people who lived in Gaza, the Palestinians living in Gaza, would tell Hamas, stop this stupid talk about destroying the Israelis. Because if you stop it, the blockade will come to an end. That's what the Israelis thought. That was a mistaken conception. The Israelis were wrong. This is one of those questions. We have an economics professor here. Does economics determine politics or politics determine economics? I believe that politics determines economics. Hamas wants to destroy the state of Israel, regardless of the well-being of the Palestinian people. The Israelis believed that if the blockade had its impact, the Palestinian people would tell Hamas, enough is enough. You can end the blockade by making peace with Israel. What the Israelis didn't understand, not only the ferocity, that the politics, the ideology was more important than any other concern for the Palestinian people. What they also didn't understand, they didn't read Mao Zedong. You know what Mao said? Political power flows from the barrel of a gun. So whatever the people in Palestine or what in Gaza thought, they couldn't do anything because Hamas and Islamic Jihad, they had the guns. So that's the end. That was the end game.
Am I allowed a continuation? And that,
Jerome, for you, anything. Go ahead.
thank you, sir.
I always take care of my students. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, sir. I think my question, just to add on to that, is so did they not believe at a certain point that the people they were trying to force to let Hamas out of there, because you say the big point was to tell them that Hamas stop this, right? But if you're building a generation over the last 20 years that believes that they're born in a prison, at a certain point, someone must have thought that, listen, these people are going to turn to, action, like action from October 7th. Those obviously terrorist attacks, but
go ahead. You finish.
yeah, I was just saying, like, at a certain point, I feel like they didn't question their policy in Gaza enough to know that at a certain point, someone is going to have this kind of action, whether true or not.
All right. Number one, again, there can be no justification.
Oh, yeah, of
There's
course.
no
yeah.
grievance, no cause.
Yeah, of course.
No justification for rape and murder and mutilation. None whatsoever.
Yeah.
As to far what the Israelis had hoped for, once again, I'm repeating myself, that either the people in Gaza would tell Hamas that enough is enough, we're suffering, or if the people at Hamas and the leadership had a decent bone in their body, they would understand what was happening to the people in Gaza and that they could end all of the suffering and the so-called open-air prison by making peace with Israel. They chose not to do so. All right. Do you want one more? And then we can call it a day. Thanks, Jerome.
I'm wondering what your response is to people who claim that Israel is an apartheid state, that they're ethnically cleansing and that it's settler colonialism.
It has often been said by some people on the other side that Israel is an apartheid state. In South Africa, there were special benches for Black people and people of color. None of that exists in the state of Israel. Palestinians who live, they used to call themselves Israeli Arabs. Now they call themselves Israeli Palestinians, are equal before the law. There is no legal discrimination against Arabs living within the state of Israel. Apartheid is a nonsensical term. Is there pressure upon Palestinians in the West Bank? The answer is yes. There's a wall there. One has to ask the question, why is there a wall there? Because Palestinian terrorists have come across and they've killed hundreds of Israelis. Why are there checkpoints? Because Palestinian terrorists have come with guns. That's why all of this is there. Again, I ask you, I tell you, you can quarrel with me all you wish. It's your prerogative. It could all come to an end if those who led the Palestinian community, if those who lead the Palestinian community has said once and for all, as Anwar Sadat said, it's over. We want the Sinai, give us the Sinai, and we will recognize you as a state. If a Palestinian leader had the guts and the decency to say that, it's all over. The conflict is over, and we would never have another rally, another meeting like this. Thank you very much for coming. Be nice to each other.
Thank you very much, Professor Berk. On your way out, please remember to take an arc and to fill it with acts of random kindness. And once it's filled, you can share the charity with whichever one you like to. Thank you and have a good night.